Michelle, and you're watching or listening to Box F1 Pod. Today we're debriefing the Miami Grand Prix, and it has been a minute. I'm so sorry, guys. I wasn't here for the Chinese Grand Prix because my computer broke and I had no way to edit the episode, but my computer is back and I am back and Miami is here and racing is back and it's just amazing. We have so much to discuss. If you have not watched, I'm just going to spoil it right now. Lando won. So we have a lot to discuss. There will likely be a lot of tears shed by me. Culinarily, I was vastly underprepared, so I am not cooking today. The best I could do was this cocktail that is literally just gin representing Lando, and grapefruit representing Miami. There's actually double F1 meaning here. I use the Betty Buzz grapefruit one. I have it on hand for top-ups. I use the Betty Buzz sparkling grapefruit, and that is the wife of a part Alpine owner, and therefore this is like as F1 as a drink can be. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. We're going to discuss the Miami Grand Prix, which shockingly was not boring. We all thought it was going to be boring. It was not boring. It was actually one of the most thrilling races we've seen in a long, long time. And we're going to talk about it all. But first, we have a lot to catch up on off the track. So without further ado, it's time for the digital warm-up. Lap 1, F1 news. So first of all, Fernando re-signed with Aston Martin for a multi-year contract. His announcement video was low-key hilarious because it's just like an empty shot with a chair, and then he walks on camera, sits down, takes a deep breath and starts talking, which was clearly a nod to Sebastian's retirement video. But he, as per usual, trolled everyone, and he's not retiring. He's continuing to race. He's been a bit wild these last few weeks. I don't know what's going on over at Aston Martin. I hope things calm down and we're back to 2023 Aston Martin, early 2023 Aston Martin, because it's been weird this year. But also, Audi announced that they've signed Nico Hülkenberg, which on one hand makes sense, I guess, because German, sure. On the other hand, that's so random. I also have not really been paying attention to Nico because I just don't care. Sorry. But he kind of reminds me of Thor in the last Marvel movie where he was like a bit let himself go. That's what Nico reminds me of. But I guess he hasn't let himself go. But I just get that vibe from him. I don't know why. Anyway, he has signed with Audi. Feels very random to me, but I guess nationality. There are rumors circling that Carlos's time to sign with them has expired. Don't know why. I guess he really thinks he's going to get a better offer, but I'm worried that he's going to leave it for too long and then have no offers. Unless that's fully untrue and they're not actually going to let such a good sign expire, because Nico is fine, but Nico is Nico. So Carlos is better, younger. I don't know. Seems weird to just stick with Nico and then someone else. Apparently they're also looking at Esteban, which again feels very random. Like, why Esteban? I don't know why they're looking at Esteban. But again, these are both people that I just relatively do not think about in general, which is mean, but there we go. Side note, there are still rumors circulating that Carlos is in talks with Red Bull. And those rumors are coming from Helmut Marko, who just literally cannot stop himself from talking to anyone with a microphone, apparently. Helmut said that they're looking at Carlos, but they can't match any of the other offers he's getting, whatever that means. But he also said Carlos is hesitant to return to Red Bull because his feelings are still hurt that they prioritized Max over him. I feel like that's not true, but that's what Helmut's saying. In other news, Adrian Newey has announced that he's leaving Red Bull at the end of this year. That is a tragic loss for Red Bull, but I imagine they expected that this might happen, and they had all of their engineers and mechanics furiously taking notes about everything and anything Adrian said so they could do their very mightiest to replicate it. He got a lot of great send off like messages. Like Max is really sad to see him go. Christian is obviously sad to see him go. Someone said, I forgot who, was saying that if a team had a choice between Max, Lewis, and Adrian Newey, they would choose Adrian Newey because he's that amazing of a designer. It seems at the moment, I haven't seen the actual interviews where he said this, but apparently Adrian Newey is like aggressively against joining Mercedes. Like full stop. I don't think he wants to join Alpine. I don't think he likes Zach Brown, but he doesn't want to join McLaren. I don't know where people are getting this information. I have not seen direct quotes from him, but I also didn't look that thing. The most likely situation is either retirement or Ferrari. Him going to Ferrari. Also, what's his name? Fred Vasseur he's like what's the word? Why can't I think of a single word that I'm trying to say? Fred Vasseur is like sneaky. Like, you know, like he seems so jolly and good-hearted. But he's just making all these moves. I would not be surprised if he's like secured Adrian Newey months ago. Just like would not be surprised. Because Max said this feels a bit early to announce this. And Fred seems to have a habit of announcing things early. But also Adrian Newey seems kind of tired. He seems kind of tired. I think he might want a break. But he's also a genius, so maybe not. In some miscellaneous news, F1 Academy is getting their own TV show. I'm very excited. It's produced by Reese Witherspoon. That's so cool. Max was named one of Time's 100 most influential people, and he literally gives zero fucks. He said, when he was asked how he feels about it, he said, yeah, but what am I supposed to do with it? It doesn't make me a better person. It doesn't make me more proud of what I've achieved or what I still want to achieve. Maybe it's a goal for other people, but for me, it's not about how influential you are. I continue to just be me and do my thing. What a humble king. And honestly, Max there is no one on the grid who is more just being them than Max Verstappen. Zero pretenses, zero trying to do something like whatever. He's literally just himself. There is a rumor that Daniel Ricciardo was going to be replaced after the Miami Grand Prix. Considering his performance in the sprint race, that might not be true anymore. It also could have never been true, which is equally as likely. I don't know why F1 has literally the wildest rumors that always end up being like categorically false or categorically true, which sounds like a stupid statement, but like I don't know how else to express the way the rumor mill works in F1. Either they're just like absurd, just like completely out of left field, no possible way to be true, or it's just dead on. You know what I mean? Like there's no like half truths, I guess. Anyway, there's also rumor that Logan Sargent would be replaced by Kimi Antonelli, but after the Miami Grand Prix. James Vowles has shut this theory down and said that they're exploring options for the 2025 and 2026 year. But who fucking knows? James Vowles continues to disappoint me, and I think I often forget that he has been generated by the Mercedes machine, and you can't be that different from the DNA that birthed you. And so, yeah, I don't know. There's rumors that Max leaving Red Bull, which is mostly fueled by Toto Wolff, who just continues to discuss the fact that Max might leave Red Bull and that his move will define the course of the driver's market. Christian is like, why would Max leave Red Bull? There are rumors about $150 million contracts from Mercedes, $250 million contracts from Mercedes. And when Max was asked about it, he was like, yeah, I don't care what my salary is. Like, I just want to race the fastest car and I want to have a good environment around me. I don't think he's getting either of those things at Mercedes. So I just like him leaving there's such a slight chance of that happening that like, I don't even know. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't know why we're bothering to discuss it. All right, moving on. Lap 2 off-duty F1. So back in China, Alex, Logan, and Oscar played paddle together and also recorded a podcast for the Williams podcast together. I think this may have been some canoodling from the PR teams because there's a lot of rumors going around that Oscar and Logan used to be best friends but don't like each other anymore. I don't know why people got that, but there's so many edits on TikTok of them like standing near each other but not looking at each other, and like all of these like very dramatic edits. I don't know if they actually dislike each other, but they got along just fine during the podcast episodes. Also from the Chinese Grand Prix, Lando finished P2 and caught a ride back with Max because he transportationally was not prepared to return home after a podium ceremony, apparently. I don't know why they fly private. I feel like that's easy to recharter, but maybe not. One of the biggest news that happened during this time off was that Lando went to Amsterdam to celebrate King's Day with his favorite human on the planet, Martin Garrix. I would like to note that no other F1 driver made the cut for Martin Garrix's King's Day party, or they couldn't come. Regardless, right now I feel like Lando's in the number one spot in terms of Martin Garrix's like top MySpace 8 or whatever. The headlines were very dramatic because it was like Lando partying hard in like this giant full zip orange hoodie, clearly drunk. And then the next pictures are him with like a very bloody nose, like wrapped in gauze, like still laughing. Everyone thought he broke his nose. The headlines were like, Lando sacrifices his chance at the Miami Grand Prix with broken nose. Like Lando puts everything in jeopardy, blah, blah, blah. Apparently he just scratched his nose with glass, but he was still walking around with like tape on his nose. And I feel like this is very important for the next theory. I'm going to pause it, so keep that in mind. Lando was injured as he raced in the Miami Grand Prix. But one of the funniest moments was that Alex told this story of he really needed to pee and he went to a Home Depot and he was like, this was my first time in a Home Depot. And he went up to the person and he was like, excuse me, where is your toilet? And the guy took him to the toilet aisle and was like, here are our toilets. And Alex was like, no, where are your toilets? And he's like, these are all our toilets. And he's like, no, I need to use it. Finally, they showed him the bathroom, which is what it's called. I literally had this reverse problem when I was in England. Someone would like come over to our flat and they'd be like, excuse me, where's your toilet? And I'm like, in the bathroom? Where else would a toilet be? Like, you can't call the whole situation that the one object in the place, you know, because that's very confusing. Where's the toilet? It's in the bathroom. Where are your toilets? It's in the toilet aisle in Home Depot. Like, also, Alex said we don't have this in the UK. You most certainly have like a home store that sells toilets. So like, I don't know which part he was claiming they don't have. You have it. It's called like Home and Gardens, and then there's like a B&W or something. You sell toilets. All right, moving on. Lap 4, F1 Academy. I watched the race, or I watched half of the race. Abby won. Charlotte Tilbury waved the flag. It was very exciting. The cars are slow. Like, I know, like, we're not supposed to say that. It's still great. Like, you can really judge a person's talent when the cars are that much slower, but like, they look small. Small and slow compared to F1 cars. Also, one of my favorite ways that they're promoting F1 Academy is by having the WAGs attend the race. I think this was like a 10 out of 10 like marketing promo decision. I hope it was Susie Wolf, because like they're all basically like influencers. Like, they all have a social following. They all know F1, obviously. Why not? They're all already there. Why not use that and use their platform to promote F1 Academy, to promote women doing the same thing they go every week to watch their men do. It's like reclaiming the WAG title, and I think it's great. So many people were complaining about it. I think that's like the best person you could have at F1 Academy, because they all know how it works. They all know all about it. Let them wag for women. I think it's great. They're expert wags. Let them wag. That's what I say. But yeah, all of them were there. Carmen, Kika, Kelly, Alex, Rebecca, all of them were there. And I just think it's fab. All right, what lap am I on? 3? These are all grossly misnumbered. Trackside in Miami, part 1. So a couple of livery updates. Ferrari made this whole hullabaloo about being blue. That didn't mean to rhyme. There's like a Ferrari Azzurra that was like their North American racing colors. And they're like, we're going to do this. And like all of their their uniforms are blue now, and all of their like merch is blue now, and it was like a whole thing. And like the expectation was the livery will also be blue. And then they unveil it and it's red with like a little like accent of blue. And the funniest video is Charles walking past it, and like, you know how he has no control over his face. It was like, and then like PR kicked in, and so it was like just like concern, and then like settling into like, yes, this is lovely. In an interview, he said he expected more blue, but he loves Ferrari to be red. So he's happy that this is what happened. And the other livery that got like a sick upgrade for Miami was Visa Cash App RB. I don't know what to call, I forgot what we call them. Carb app, V-Carb. They were like all like fuchsia Technicolor. It was a very cool car. And I think it helped them perform well because they were like on top of their game this weekend. So 10 out of 10 decision. All right, lap 4. Lap 4, trackside at Miami Part 2, celebrities. So there was a whole range, there was a whole spectrum of celebs in Miami. The ones that know and love F1, and then the ones that are like, woohoo, I'm at F1, as if that's like a noun. I mean, it is a noun, but you're like at the Grand Prix. You're not at the F1. Like that's, okay, whatever. I'm being nitpicky. I sound like all of the other annoying fans. Anyway, Ed Sheeran was there. He performed that weekend, and he was in the Red Bull garage for a bit. He was in the Ferrari garage for a bit. Him and Charles had like a whole moment. Ed was like, I'm a Charles fan now. And Charles was like, I love Ed. Loving Ed is such a Charles thing. Like it's so Charles coded. He was asked in an interview what he's looking forward most to about the Miami Grand Prix. And he said George Russell was giving a hot lap. And he was, quote, that's what I'm looking forward to. A bit of G-force. I love that statement. I know that's weird. I'm just looking forward to a bit of G-force. What a vibe. So George Russell gave Ed Sheeran a hot lap. Ed Sheeran was tweaking out. Like he was losing his shit. Also, George Russell's a very British looking man. He looks exotic next to Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran is like translucent. He is literally translucent and fluorescent at the same time. It's incredible. Kendall Jenner was there. Kendall is obviously friends with Lewis. The whole fam's friends with Lewis. She had some great outfits. I think she was also a guest of Tommy Hilfiger, so obviously with Mercedes. Lewis did give her a hot lap, and she was literally panicking to the point she was like shrieking. She drives cars. Like, I don't know why she was freaking out so much. But literally at one point she goes, Lewis, we have the Met Gala on Monday. Accidentally outing the fact that Lewis was going to the Met Gala, which I loved. He did attend. We'll get to his outfit in a second. But yes, Kendall Jenner was there. Jimmy Butler was there, and he continues to be a Lando stan. He was wearing a McLaren polo and had written Lando on top of it and was like, everyone call me Lando. He called him great, young, attractive, and Lando commented, on the video. And he like kept saying that Lando's gonna win. Lando's gonna win. Everyone's like, oh, Jimmy, you're so silly. Lando won. So way to go, Jimmy. Also, I really love that Jimmy's not just a Miami GP fan. He's been to a couple, and he has like goals. He had like a list of goals that he wanted to accomplish in the F1 world, which I love. One of those goals is not sitting in an F1 car ever again. He said he would never step foot in a car again. He's like, I like going slow. Patrick Mahomes and Brittany Mahomes were there. Travis Kelce did show up on Sunday solo in a great green silk fit. It was great. Camila Cabello was there, and like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but she gives me the ick. The way she was talking about F1, the way she was behaving, I don't know what she was there for. It felt very PR-y. Like when she was on the grid walk, her agent like literally summoned Brundle over and was like, yeah, you can talk to her. No one has ever summoned Brundle over. Like, it felt very over the top. And her she like can't hold a conversation. Brundle was actually very well prepared for this interview. He was actually asking great questions. He was referencing her work. And she was not giving much back. She also did the Charles Leclerc video, you know, the Charles, you know, the kid shouting. And she did it all over the paddock, including in front of a poster of Carlos Sainz. She eventually met Charles, who was like, I saw the video. Of course, Charles did. He was very sweet. Carlos met her. Lewis met her. Content for all of it. I found it very weird. Found her a bit annoying, but she is Miami sweetheart, so checks out. Also, there was an iconic video. I'm going to share it from the Charlotte Tilbury influencer crew. It included Lissy, the F1 person. I don't know how to describe her. Susie Wolf, Charlotte Tilbury, F1 Academy driver Bianca. Is that her name? Bianca. Carmen was in it, and they did like the sound from Mean Girls where they were all mouthing it. It was great content. F1 Academy, I feel like, is going to generate some excellent content because they're going to be very exclusive with who they invite and who they like have participate. And I feel like everyone has to have a base level knowledge of motorsport, you know? Max Verstappen met Jack Charles. Is that his name? Jack Charles. And I'll link the video, the range of emotion on his face, like seeing him like looking like this and then immediately like settling into the PR phase, like smiling, but still looking confused at the situation was hilarious. Also, I love some of the content that's been online was the fact that this is not related to the celebrity section, but I forgot about it. So I'm talking about it here. The Taylor Swift lyric, I'd rather burn my whole life down than listen to one more second of all your bitching and moaning. People keep putting that over Toto's face because he's so done with Lewis. Like he keeps bad mouthing him in the press. He's like, Lewis is in a very good mood this weekend, which is very unlike Lewis. Like, I don't know why he's in such a good mood. Toto, chill. Like, I know you're butthurt. You have every right to be butthurt, but like this relationship has deteriorated so fast. It's kind of sad. They were like this. I couldn't cross like this. Anyway, it's kind of sad. Speaking of Lewis, before I comment on it, I would like to say that I'm finally aligned with the news cycle, and I'm happy to report that I am recording this as soon as Lewis Hamilton stepped off the Met Gala red carpet, so I can very confidently watch one of the other F1 drivers be on the carpet, and I missed it. Lewis Hamilton attended the Met Gala, which we already knew because Kendall Jenner outed him. Honestly, hot laps are the best way to get confessions out of people. Like, clearly, they will blurt out anything. All, like, late-night interviews should just take place during a hot lap, and they'll get all the info we need. And, chicken shop date during a hot lap. 10 out of 10 should happen. Actually, it's probably dangerous to be eating while you do that. Anyway, Lewis wore Burberry, and I actually loved his outfit because I think sometimes Lewis can go a bit too over the top without it meaning anything, whereas in this case, it was a very understated outfit that still served the purpose of the theme in a very subtle way, and I loved it. He looked so cool. It was like a full black suit. The suit jacket had like flower embellishments, details, like pop-up flowers on it. I don't know how to describe it. Like, it was all black and the flowers were also black. And then he was wearing this like gold like chain that was kind of flat like around his collar. And he had 2 flower stud earrings in. It was just like on theme. It was great. He looked amazing. This is one of my favorite outfits of his. It wasn't like a suit jacket. It was like a jacket, like below his knees. Anyway, he looks great. I truly am so impressed. All right. With that, we conclude the digital warm-up. On to the race rhyme. It's the Miami GP, so welcome one and all to the 305. Will it just be boring racing and influencers, or are we in for a surprise? From Ed to Travis to Kendall, there were all the celebs you could desire. And let's not forget Pookie was in attendance, looking absolutely fire. And as if all that stuff wasn't enough overstimulation, it was also a whole sprint race weekend situation. Now, the sprint race was when we knew this weekend might be exciting, and that's not just because Max claimed his car wasn't to his liking. Kicking off with a sprint shootout when Max bagged pole, but his stint was mediocre, and all he could say, and I quote, was lol. In the actual sprint race, things started to take a turn. Yes, Max won, but there's other content for us to churn. Either Lance or Fernando were like, I'm an Aston Martin. I steered straight into Lando. Alternatively, it could have been Lewis going, I'm a Mercedes-Benz. I steered straight into Lando. Obviously, I got confused, but Lando was taken out by someone who may or may not be Fernando. Kevin Magnussen got 4 penalties for ballsy or douchey driving. Meanwhile, Danny Rick finished 4th, and if only but for a few hours, he was thriving. It's finally Sunday, but I'm halfway through my rhyme, so let's speed things up since we're running out of time. Checo bursts with the crowd, almost taking out the top few plus his teammate. Meanwhile, Oscar sneaks his way into the top 3 like, excuse me, can I get through, mate? We get some sick battles between the Alpines and also Lewis and Hülkenberg, and then Max took out a cone like he was the Hindenburg. He carried that cone through half the track before a virtual safety car was set out to get the cone back. Oscar is now leading the race, but it's not for long. Magnussen is on the case. Kevin the Menace spots his new target. Let's end the race of sweet baby Logan Sargent. Suddenly, little Lando Norris finds himself leader of the pack. With 20 laps to go, can he bring it home to Zach? Not that we want to talk about anything else, but we do have some drama afoot. Oscar and Carlos are battling so hard it becomes concerning what might go kaput. And indeed, after many back and forths, a final overtake sends Oscar limping to the back of the grid. I guess there's no stopping Carlos Sainz. Sorry, kid. But back to the best news of all, little Lando Norris has landed. He brings it home as across the crowd his name is chanted. Everyone is thrilled for Lando's historic win, and what a thrill to see his trophy and that grin. That's it for the Miami Grand Prix. See you soon in Italy. On to analysis. So first, in the sprint shootout, the best thing we need to talk about is the fact that after the shootout, it went so poorly. Max had a terrible race. He did not like his car. And he was told that GP told him he was P1, and he literally went, I'm quoting, lol, what happened to the others? The fact that he said lol on the radio, someone's been gaming a little too much. A little. But the other biggest story, the actual biggest story other than Max saying lol, was that Daniel qualified 4th. That was unexpected. In the actual sprint, there was a massive issue in the first lap, like turn 1, turn 2. Lando was taken out by, I've watched this a lot of times. I'm still trying to figure out who took out who. Everyone seems to have a different opinion. It seemed someone swerved. I think Fernando swerved. Lewis thought he had a gap. He went for it. He did not have a gap. They all collided, and Lando suffered the consequences. Lando, in his post-race interview, said, "Today we paid the price of being back with the people who are a bit more careless," but he was specifically talking about Lewis. I think he specifically called him out. So he blames Lewis. I don't know who's actually to blame. I think they're all not innocent, but I will say Lance seems the most innocent out of everyone involved. He is getting the most flack for it because it's easy. I actually think he's relatively innocent this time. After last week, don't blame people in China when that whole thing with Daniel and that he still hasn't apologized. Do not blame people for blaming him, but in this case, not sure it was his fault. Kevin Magnussen got 4 fucking penalties during this sprint. 19 laps, 4 penalties. I think it was 3 15-second ones and 1 5-second one, something along those lines. I think it was a total of like 40 seconds. That might be wrong, maybe 35. He got 4 penalties for a specific assortment of time, which is crazy, like crazy. But the craziest part is that no one is mad at him about it. Like he is, like at the end of the race, he was asked about the penalties. He's like, "Oh yeah, fully deserved, but I had no choice. I had to help my teammate. I had to drive like that." Did you have to drive like that? But he's such a menace on that track. And Lewis was like, "This was great. Had the time of my life. 10 out of 10 would do it again." What? He was so annoying. Like, I don't understand the standard that we have for Kevin Magnussen. I was like, oh, it's just Kevin. But everyone gets so mad. I don't know. It's just really weird. I would be annoyed. I feel like it's like warranted to be annoyed at him. Max won. He was not particularly like over the moon about it. Like his radio messages literally always sound like he feels like he's supposed to say something. Like he was like, "Well, first weekend's done." Like it feels like he needs to, it feels like he was told like when GP tells you you've won, respond. So he was like, "Okay, here I go." And then he just says like nonsense. And Daniel also finished 4th. So woohoo, Daniel. He actually completed what he set out to do. That did not translate to qualifying or the race. Moving on to quali though, right before in the interviews after a sprint, because it's the same day, Charles literally went, "Let's see how happy Max is with his car. I hope he's still a little unhappy." Anyway, after quali, the starting grid was as follows, and with all the penalties enacted. It was Max, Charles, Carlos, Checo, Lando, Oscar, George, Lewis, Nico, Yuki, Lance, Gasly, Ocon, Alex, Alonso, Bottas, Logan, Daniel, Kevin, and Zhou Guanyu. There were several penalties occurred so far during the weekend. Esteban Ocon got a 10-second penalty before the sprint race. Kevin Magnussen did receive 35 seconds total of penalties during the sprint race. Lewis Hamilton got a penalty for speeding in the pit lane, which was, I think, 20 seconds after the sprint race, which dropped him from P8 to P16. And I think the only, don't quote me on it, some of these were incurred during the sprint race, for the sprint race. Some of them were incurred were applied during the actual race. I think Daniels from China were applied during this race. I think anything Fernando had was also applied during this race. So I'm going to try to sum up this race quickly, because let me just start by saying this was an amazing race. But like, I was trying to tell, my friend didn't watch live, and she was like, because we all know Lando won now. And she's like, oh, but and she was like, oh, so Max DNF'd. And I was like, no, Max is second. And she's like, oh, so Lando won it. Like, he competed for it. And I'm like, no, not technically. But also, when you say that, I'm like, but also, like, there was something happening the whole time. Like, I think the best way to summarize how active this Grand Prix was is the fact that there were hundreds of celebrities in that paddock, and there was no time to pan to a single one. We didn't see a single celebrity during the Grand Prix. And Crofty sounded like a freaking like Kentucky Derby announcer. Like, the way he was rattling off those names every 30 seconds, like, because it kept changing, was wild. Like, so fast, so quickly, and then we had to like start over because something would change. So there was always something happening. There were insane overtakes. There were such cool battles the whole time. But like, the success of the top four weren't really necessarily won via not top four, top three. The top three weren't necessarily achieved via overtakes, if that makes sense. That a lot of that was luck plus maintenance. So like at the start, the craziest thing about the start is that Max had a relatively good start. Charles had a terrible start. It was very chaotic because out of nowhere, just a car blasts forward, and it's Checo, and it looks like he's about to take out the top three in front of him. He literally almost like rails into Max and just misses him and goes wide and off the track. Like, lucky for him, everyone was like just a millimeter to the right, and he would have no job next year or this year. Imagine if he took out Max. So that was like really crazy. Carlos got on the radio and was like, what the fuck was that? That needs a penalty. He nearly took us out. Which, yes, he did almost take everyone out. But moving past that insane like moment, Oscar Piastri had an incredible race. Like, in that moment of chaos, he somehow pushed forward from P6 and into P3. And then he overtook Charles for P2. And he was actually having one of the best races. Like, he had some overtakes. He defended a lot. And he was always like mingling up in the top 5 area, you know, despite everything that was going on. So the first incident was Max went wide on one of the corners and just like picked up a cone. Like, it wasn't like a triangle cone. It was like one of those pillory orange cones. And it sort of just nestled into his front wing and stayed there for about half the lap before it fell off into the middle of the track. And at first, no one knew where it came from because we didn't actually see the play of him picking up the cone. We just saw a cone in the middle of the track. And then we got the radio message of Max saying, I hit that cone. Can you check my front wing? And at first, I thought that meant he hit it when it was in the middle of the road. But no, he like lifted it up from the side and like splayed it out into the middle of the track. So a virtual safety car was called to remove it. People were complaining about it, complaining about the cone being in the way. So a virtual safety car was called to remove it. Max had to pit, change his front wing, change his tires, comes out P4, and now Oscar is technically leading the race. My favorite moment after this happened was Lewis got on the radio and was complaining that he can't see the curb now that the cone that Max stopped over is gone. And I think it was Brundle, was like, the thing about the racetrack is they don't move. So the curb is exactly where it was before. True. I assume the visual aid does help a little. So this was going on. Oscar was now leading in some capacity. There was like a bit of back and forth still going on. And then lap 28, there's a yellow flag because Kevin Magnussen has taken out Logan Sargent. And Logan Sargent's rear wing is like this on his car. To me, it seemed like it was 100% Kevin Magnussen's fault. So I think Sargent was ahead and Kevin just literally appeared out of nowhere and tried to squeeze by and just like in a place where Logan wouldn't be checking his mirrors. So it was like uncalled for by Kevin. I've seen a lot of people blaming Logan for this. I don't see how this is Logan's fault at all. But maybe I'm missing something. Very possible that I've entirely misunderstood this entire situation. But it looked like Kevin took him out. And there are penalties that proved it because he got yet another penalty. And I think he's up to 10 penalty points now. And he's very close to having to miss a race. Very close. And the way that he is driving, that seems very likely. Like, because like also every penalty he gets, he's like, yep, I deserve that. Like, I don't know what the vibe is in his head at the moment. Like, what is this reckless driving that no one seems to care about? I'm sure Logan cares, but like, I don't understand what's going on with Kevin. Like, he's a menace. He's making things fun, but he's also knocking people out. So maybe rein in that mischievous, like, behavior, you know? This safety car has worked out exquisitely for little Lando Norris, who is able to pit and come out like 35 seconds ahead of everyone else. They obviously have to like readjust everyone on the grid, and then when they obviously for the running start, they're all lined up. So he doesn't actually have a 35-second ahead, but I don't even know how it happened that he could pit and have so many seconds ahead of everyone else. The commentators were even saying that he was like almost like a lap ahead of everyone. So they had to like obviously adjust. And so when we restart, everyone was kind of questioning Lando's start. He like went a bit sooner than everyone expected, but doesn't fucking matter because it worked. Before long, he was leading by over a second from Verstappen. Charles tried to overtake Max, failed. Max had serious car damage. I think they found a problem with his floor. Everything felt wrong to him. He still finished second. So how wrong could it have been? But like there was issues there. Anyways, at this point, with the 20 laps going, Lando is leading by about 7 seconds, which is impressive. Very, very impressive. And yet everyone is literally on the edge of their seats losing their fucking minds because anything could happen. So many times Crofty would be like, I don't want to jinx it, but like this may be Lando's first win. And Brundle's like, can you talk about literally anything else? Anything else? And Crofty was like, sure. What do you want to talk about? Brundle's like, anything else? Anything. And then Crofty was almost like ready to talk about the weather because nothing was going on. But then we got some drama. Carlos and Oscar. Look, the whole internet is like, Carlos has beef with Oscar, and it's like one-sided beef. They keep comparing him to Kendrick and Drake, except they have two-sided beef. Just Kendrick's is a bit spicier. But Carlos seems to have something against Oscar. At least that's what people are saying. I think his irritation was warranted. I think he went a little over the top with his irritation. Like, he radioed in like 7 times being like, he needs a penalty. Oh, I should say why. Sorry. Carlos overtakes Oscar, and then Oscar overtakes him back, which forced Carlos off the track a bit. And Carlos immediately got on the radio and said, he forced me off. He pushed me off. Oscar did push him off, but the commentators don't think it warrants anything. Just a bit racing, because I think it would only be an issue if Oscar went off track and then went ahead, and then he'd have to give the place back. But if he also shouldn't be pushing people off. I don't know why this is considered a racing incident, but in other cases, it's not okay to push people off track. Maybe because he had the room to not go off track, and then Carlos did anyway. Not sure. Carlos is phoning in frequently. At one point, he was like, just tell him they can give me my position back, and he doesn't have to get a penalty. And I just like, it makes me laugh every time because Carlos, I feel like Carlos thinks he has to play the part of every single person in the entire paddock. Stu, marshal, engineer, mechanic. I'm surprised he's not changing his own wheels at this point. It reminds me of this one clip that Ferrari shared of him and Charles in the car, and Carlos sneezes, and Charles does say bless you, but Carlos sneezes, says bless you, thank you, you're welcome. And Charles is like, are you talking to yourself? I feel like that's very exemplary of how Carlos thinks he needs to be on track, just like doing all of it. He gets back on the radio and goes, tell McLaren to be telling him because they need to be telling him. And then Carlos tried to overtake Oscar on his own without the assistance, and it didn't work. And then came in the call that there was no further investigation, which I guess peeved Carlos off. He attempted like 3 more overtakes, and at one point Ricky was giving him some information. He's like, don't worry about it, something. And Carlos goes, leave me alone, Ricky. And then continues fervently to try to overtake Oscar. They're like back and forth. Carlos eventually does overtake him. They do touch slightly. Carlos does get ahead. Oscar pushes back ahead, but then he locks up, so Carlos is able to go ahead and secure P4. And then Oscar is overtaken by Hamilton and Checo in one turn simultaneously. It was really sad. And it turns out that he had damage from the contact they had. Somehow it looks like it's Oscar's fault. Like he put his car where it shouldn't have been, but Carlos was being so aggressive, he's kind of being blamed for it. Carlos also complained there was something wrong with the car. He was like, check the downforce. And Ricky was like, there's nothing wrong with your car. Poor Oscar ended up going to the very back and having to fight. He did fight his way up, like a few people. There was not much time left for him to do much, but he did fight his way through like 4 people. And he set fastest lap, which of course doesn't matter because he wasn't in the top 10, but he did do it. And it's just really sad because he had such a great race the whole time. And for it to end like this is really sad. And it's extra sad, not like sad, but like hard, I imagine, when his teammate won and he had such a difficult day, and being happy for his teammate while dealing with that. And Oscar is so quiet and like reserved and like doesn't express much. Like it sounds like he's silent on the radio all the time. So I just kind of feel bad for him. Also, his mom is Pilates for this. And that makes me mad. Some other cool battles that I didn't mention were Kevin and Nico. Esteban and Gasly got in the fight at the very beginning. Some other cool fights that I didn't mention was Esteban and Gasly got into a fight and almost took each other out. Lewis and Nico had a pretty aggressive fight where they kept going back and forth. And again, after the race was like, this was the most fun I've ever had. He seems like Haas's #1 fan these days. It's weird. And then there was also Fernando and Esteban at the end where they battled each other. Esteban won and he scored his very first point for Alpine, which is very good. Patrick and Travis Kelce came all this way to watch their team that they invested in score 1 point. Low-key embarrassing, but also given how that like atrocity of a car has been performing, kudos to Esteban. I'm just speaking of the battle after the race, Esteban and Fernando took a selfie together and Esteban posted it and said, this was so much fun. So glad to see they patched things up. They were a bit salty for a while. And the other shout out I want to make is Yuki, who finished 7th. He's such a king. I'm so happy for him. What a great finish. And Yuki is just thriving. And I really, just because Honda is leaving next year, I really don't want to see him lose a seat because he has been one of the greatest success stories in terms of committing and improving. And it's just been great to watch. All right. So the very end, everyone's on their edge. They show the McLaren garage and they're like, like literally can't watch but watching, even though it's clear he's 7 seconds ahead of Max. Something drastic has to happen for him not to win. And he wins and I was sobbing like a fucking baby. I don't know why. It just hit me. Well, I know why. It was just really wholesome to see him win. His radio was just shrieking, and then his like extra lap and seeing him pass all the drivers who were all like were clapping for him from their cars and waving at him. And then when he parked firm and he did his little celebration on his car, and to see all the drivers come, Max was the first to hug him, and then Charles came to congratulate him, and then Fernando came out of nowhere. Like, how long is that walk? He walked all the way into Park Ferme, not even in the interview area, but where their cars were. And I don't know where the others are parked. Like, how long did he walk? Did he like rush weigh himself and run over to hug him and congratulate him? And then Carlos came and hugged him. And it was like, the look on Lando's face was like a long lost, like coming home, like face, like he went like this, and then the Carlos hugged him and it was so sweet, and then he weighed himself, and then Daniel came out of nowhere, and then George came to congratulate him, and I'm definitely missing someone. So many people congratulated him. Lewis congratulated him later in the pen. And then he like dove into his engineers and they crowd surfed him, and it was very sweet. And his hug was Zach, even though I hate Zach, but he hugged Zach and it was very cute. And his hug with Andrea Stella was so wholesome. And it was all just like 10 out of 10. There was like not a single bad moment the entire time. And like the cheers were audible for him. And sadly, I think part of the reason people were cheering so hard is because finally it wasn't Max winning again. But also it's just, you want to root for him. He had set the record for the most podiums without a win. And then Max was like looking at him like a proud dad again. Honestly, haven't seen Max this happy in years. Like, or at least like in the last like year and a half. Like, he has not been this happy in a long, like, all of his wins, doesn't give a fuck. Watching Lando win, he was thrilled. Oh, Esteban also came to congratulate him. Lando was asked how he feels, and Lando goes, fuck. Oh, sorry. Then they drove to the cool down room, and I wish I got to hear the whole cool down room, but watching Max's face react to Checo almost taking him out was hilarious. Watching them watch the Kevin and Logan crash was also funny because Max goes, well, it's okay. He has a new chassis now, right? He doesn't. He does not have a new chassis. And then they went to the podium and I was still crying, and they played the much shorter English national anthem than the Dutch one. And then I don't know if Charles and Max planned this, but they literally just walked up and like sprayed the champagne directly in Lando's face, just like this. And then Lando finally popped his champagne, but he couldn't even like see because there was so much champagne in his eyes. He kept like rubbing his eyes. Also, when he got handed the trophy, he like raised it up in the air and then he did like a quick like hug to it. It was very cute. Just like nonstop fun. Also very funny. So he went out to celebrate that night. And I think Pierre was there because Pierre, where there's a party, Pierre is there. And the girls at the club were holding up a sign, like the workers there. I don't know what they're called, shot girls or something. The club workers, employees, were holding up a sign that said, congrats Lando, but they wrote congrats Landon with an N. And you could just see Pierre cackling, and Lando looked so, like, was also laughing. It was just really funny. Also, when McLaren was celebrating as a team, you know, when they like take the picture and then they run with the champagne, Fred Vasseur came to party too. The French love to party. And he was standing there in his like blue shirt, and then Zach threw him a cap. So he put on the McLaren cap backwards. And then he was hiding amongst the photographers with a secret hidden champagne bottle. And when they all started spraying, he like popped out and started spraying them too. Little rascal, Fred Vasseur. But what I have to discuss is two quotes that Max gave in the post-race conference that were just iconic and will forever be engraved in my head. The first one is he was asked what happened with the cone, and Max just deadpans, straight up goes, I didn't like it, so I got rid of it. And I tested the durability of the front wing while I was at it. Crash test done, and got it out of the way for everyone else so they had free range. That was funny. And the second one is actually one of the funniest things I think that has ever happened. He was asked what would have happened if there wasn't a safety car, if Lando would have still won. And he's like, all these questions, ifs. If my mom had balls, she'd be my dad. And Lando just bursts out this high-pitched giggle, like face palming. And Charles looks slightly confused at first, but then he like, I think clicks on, he's just laughing, like he's just like, just staring straight ahead, like laughing, but like Lando was dying. And then he finally finishes laughing and he goes, yeah. Honestly, I'm surprised it took this long for Max to give a response like that, because some of these questions are so dumb. Like, who the fuck cares what would have happened if there wasn't this or if there wasn't that? If his mom had balls, she'd be his dad. Another kind of funny moment was not as funny as Max. Nothing's going to top that. But George was asked how it felt to no longer be the last British driver to win a race. And he responded, that's a very negative way to say, how do you feel about Lando winning the race? And like, good for him, call that journalist out. Stupid question. I think the theme I'm going with here is journalists ask stupid questions. Also, side note, don't really want to talk about him, but Trump was there visiting the McLaren garage. And halfway through the race when Lando was leading, and I was like, oh my God, this might happen. I literally posted on my story, Trump's going to take credit for this, isn't he? And sure enough, Trump tweeted or truthed, whatever the fuck his platform is called, that like, of course, this is the car that I visited and endorsed, and therefore, here you go. And that was a terrible Trump impression. And Lando said that he met him, and Trump said that he was his good luck charm. Okay, what I do think is more the good luck charm is the very apparent trend that the way to win a race this year, unless you're Max Verstappen, is to injure yourself. Carlos Sainz, appendix, surgery, scars, wins a race. Lando Norris maimens his nose next week, wins a race. I'm just saying, the drivers have their answer. I want to start seeing some maiming. Just kidding, I don't. But seems like this is the key. All right, results. Driver of the day was Lando, fully warranted. Oscar was up there until he got taken out. Honestly, I think his driving was pretty superb today, so I think he's fully honorable mention. Also, this is very random, but Valtteri was third most voted in driver of the day. He only had like 7%, but like, how did he get there and why? Why? Dick in the box, 1,000,000% Kevin Magnussen, who has officially become the new Ocon. Except Ocon was like unfairly being targeted by the FIA, whereas Kevin seems to be intentionally targeting literally everyone who gets in his way. So same, but different. So the final results for this race are as follows. Lando, Max, Charles, Checo, Carlos. Oh, Carlos got a penalty. I guess Carlos got a penalty because he's fifth now. Lewis, Yuki, George, Fernando, Esteban, Nico, Pierre, Oscar, Guan Yu, Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas, Lance Stroll, Alex Albon, Kevin Magnussen, and Logan Sargent DNF'd. Tragic. In his home race, tragic. The standings for 2024 so far are as follows. Max with 136 points, Checo with 103 points, Charles with 98 points, Lando with 83 points, Carlos with 83 points, Oscar with 41, George with 37, Fernando with 33, Lewis with 27, and Yuki with 14, which rounds up the top 10. How is Charles? I guess Charles has had more podiums because he's ahead of both Lando and Carlos, who have both won. Interesting. Oh, and I guess the sprint. Yeah, there's the sprint. All right. The constructors' standings are as follows. Red Bull with 239 points, Ferrari with 187, McLaren with 124, Mercedes with 64, Aston with 42, V-Cash with 19, Haas with 7, Alpine with 1. Thank you, Esteban. Williams with 0, and Kick Sauber with 0. And Williams is ahead of Kick Sauber with the zeros because they let Alex drive Logan's car, and he got much closer to a point than Logan would have had. Worth it. All right. So that's it for the Miami Grand Prix. Whirlwind of emotions. Don't know if I did it justice. I feel like I sped through, but what a race. What a race. What a moment. What a time to be alive. So happy I got to witness it live. Next up is Emilia Romagna. Make sure you subscribe, share with any potential boxes, like, comment, and in between races, make sure you follow at BoxBoxF1Pod on social to keep up in between. Until next time, Box.